They laughed at her, trapped her in, and thought she'd stay quiet, like she always had. But the new black girl showed them what Detroit had taught her. Tameka Rollins didn't expect a friendly welcome. She sat in the passenger seat of her mom's old 2008 Chevy Malibu, staring straight at the red brick school ahead. Jefferson Middle School, just outside Fort Wayne, Indiana. The place looked neat, with big windows and mostly white faces. It was her first day. She didn't ask any questions. She opened the car door, fixed the strap of her backpack, and got out. Her mom, Yolanda, leaned over and gave her shoulder a firm squeeze. "Text me if something's wrong," she said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes searched Tameka's face like a doctor checking for bleeding after surgery. "You hear me, Meek?" "I hear you," Tameka said. Inside, the hallways weren't exactly quiet, but something felt off. Like everyone knew a new girl had arrived, someone who didn't look like them. Tameka stood out, not because she acted out or dressed loud, but because she was black in a place that wasn't used to that. She walked into homeroom and felt the stares immediately. It was just a moment, short enough to be ignored, but long enough for her to feel it. Kids looked at her hair, pulled back tight into a puff. Then at her thin jacket, not warm enough for Indiana cold, but it was all they could afford last month. She didn't stare back. She found the empty seat, back row, third from the left, and walked to it without stopping or slowing down. "Hey," someone whispered just loud enough. "Who invited Wakanda?" A weak laugh followed. Tameka didn't turn, didn't blink. She'd heard worse back in Detroit. But what caught her attention wasn't the joke. It was the girl who said it. Blonde, shiny lip gloss, oversized sweatshirt that probably cost more than Tameka's whole outfit. And she said it like she thought no one would dare respond. Her name, Tameka would learn later, was Amber Klein. Then there was Brett. Brett Hanley sat at the front, feet stretched out, already bored before class had even begun. His hair was buzzed short, and he had that smug expression like it came free with his Nike hoodie. He didn't say anything yet, but the way he looked at her said enough, like she was a problem he didn't want to deal with. Tameka didn't react. She came here to finish 8th grade. That's it. She unpacked her notebook and glanced at the whiteboard. Welcome to U.S. history. She'd already done most of this back in Detroit. Maybe she could blend in, maybe they'd lose interest. But bored kids with nothing to prove. That's one thing. Spoiled kids who feel like they have something to lose. That's something else. At lunch, Tameka sat alone, not because she wanted to, but because no one invited her. Her tray had cold pizza and lumpy mashed potatoes that didn't even smell like food. She took 2 bites, then pushed it away. She'd eat when she got home. "Do you do voodoo?" The question came from 3 seats over. A boy in a varsity hoodie, not Brett, not even bold, just testing the waters. "Bet she's got a chicken foot in her bag," someone else added. Tameka let out a slow breath through her nose. Calm, in control. The lunch monitor didn't say a word, just looked away. Tameka didn't reply. She stood, dumped her tray and walked out. She didn't ask for directions. She found the library and stayed there until the bell rang. She wasn't trying to start trouble, but trouble seemed to be hunting her. And there's only so long you can keep your head down when people keep trying to step on it. By the end of her first week, Tameka already understood the school's social rules. Unspoken, but strictly followed. Brett sat at the middle table in the cafeteria. That told her all she needed to know. If he laughed, others laughed. If he mocked someone, no one defended them. Amber sat next to him like she owned half his attention. They weren't officially a couple, but it didn't matter. Together they ran the halls without raising their voices. They could ruin your day with just a glance. Tameka kept to the edges of every room, always aware of who was around her. She ate fast, kept her earbuds in, even when they weren't playing anything. Still, they kept pushing her, not all at once, never as a group, just enough to remind her she didn't belong. Friday morning, someone used a marker on her locker. The word was short and rushed, like the writer didn't have much time. 3 letters, ugly, sharp, a smeared handprint next to it. She stared at it for 5 seconds, then grabbed a tissue from her backpack and started wiping it clean. A teacher walked by, said nothing. Tameka didn't report it. She didn't want to sit in some quiet office while an assistant principal promised to look into it, then forget by lunchtime. She just went to her next class like nothing happened. But the thing about kids like Brett and Amber, they don't get bored, especially when they smell fear. They want a reaction, and when they don't get one, they step it up. On Monday, Brett knocked her binder off her desk as he passed by. "Oops," he said, smirking. Tameka picked it up without saying a word. "I'm just saying," Amber said loudly in the locker room while brushing her hair. "Some people smell different, like greasy or something. It's weird." She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. The girls nearby giggled like they'd been waiting for it. One looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Tameka kept tying her shoes, eyes on the laces. That night, she walked home instead of taking the bus. It was cold, but she didn't care. She needed the quiet. Her mum wouldn't ask questions. She was always too tired after working double shifts at the rehab center. But when she saw Tameka walk in, mud on her shoes, ripped backpack strap, she waited in the kitchen. "You good?" Yolanda finally asked. "Yeah," Tameka said. "Just a long day?" Her mum didn't press. She just pulled her daughter into a hug and held her close. That was the only part of Tameka's day that didn't feel like a fight. Back at school, the jokes kept coming. Now it was about her voice, the way she walked, how she always looked mad. "I bet she writes poems about gang wars," someone said behind her. The laughter wasn't cruel. It was easy, natural. They were used to mocking her. They believed she'd always stay quiet. And to them, silence meant permission. But what they didn't realize, what none of them saw, was that Tameka was watching, studying, figuring out who just followed and who actually lit the match. Detroit had taught her something important. There's a difference between scared people and dangerous people. She knew the ones who throw the first stone almost never have the strength to stand in the ruins. Brett wasn't just a bully. He was proud of it. Amber didn't just talk behind backs. She made sure everyone heard her. Amber poisoned people quietly. Not with words loud enough for teachers to hear, but with whispers that twisted into truths. Her gossip moved like smoke, slow, creeping, and impossible to catch. She made others afraid to speak up, and in the silence, she thrived. But that silence wasn't protecting her anymore. It just gave them more time to plan the next hit. One afternoon, Tameka got cornered behind the auditorium. No teachers, no cameras, just her and them. Brett stepped too close, closer than he had any right to. His breath hit her cheek. She didn't flinch, didn't back down. She looked him right in the eye and said, "Back up." He smirked. "You gonna make me?" That was the moment, right there. Something in her stirred, something that Detroit hadn't killed, just buried for a while. A version of her that remembered how to fight, how to survive. But before she did anything, she had to be sure. Sure she was ready to finish what she started. Tameka's house sat on a quiet street where the mailboxes leaned sideways and the yards were tidy but tired. The kind of place where people worked hard just to stay afloat. The paint on their porch peeled in long strips, and the heater worked when it wanted. But it was home. And home didn't have to be easy. It just had to be safe. Her mum, Yolanda Rollins, worked sunrise to night, first shift cleaning at a rehab center, then part-time hours at a senior home. She left Tameka grocery money in a folded envelope and wrote reminders on sticky notes like prayers. "Don't forget your scarf. Text me if you get out early. Take your vitamins." It wasn't long speeches, it was presence. Quiet love, written in ink. After school, Tameka came in, kicked off her shoes, dropped her backpack, and got to work. Washing dishes, heating leftovers, folding laundry. Then she sat at the kitchen table with her homework, trying to stay focused. But her mind kept circling back to that moment behind the auditorium. Brett, his smirk, his words. "You gonna make me?" She hadn't moved. She just stared back and said it again, back up. And he did, not because he was scared, because he thought it was funny, like she was some glitch in his game. That laugh stuck with her. At dinner, she sat in front of the muted TV. The news anchors smiled. The weather was clear. None of it matched the storm inside her. She thought about calling her cousin Brianna in Detroit. Brianna would understand. But it had been months. They'd drifted. That night, Tameka couldn't sleep. She tossed under the blankets, eyes following the cracks in the ceiling, thinking back to the first time she'd been cornered. She was 10, not Brett, a girl named Jaleesa, twice her size and always looking for a target. One day, Jaleesa caught Tameka walking home alone and shoved her into a fence. Told her to say sorry for something she didn't even do. Tameka had stood there, silent, shaking, trying not to cry. Then Uncle Ro pulled up, didn't say a word, just got out, walked her to the truck, and took her home. That night, he handed her a pair of old sparring gloves, worn and soft at the edges. "Put 'em on," he said. "You don't start fights," he told her as he tightened the straps. "But if someone brings it to your feet, you finish it. Don't go looking for trouble, but don't run either. That's how you get hunted." She never forgot those words, or his face when he said them. Back then, she practiced in their basement, light jabs, footwork, breathing through the swing. She thought it was just for fun. Now she knew better. That morning, she woke up early, before the sun, pulled on a hoodie and stepped into the backyard. Quiet, cold, still. She raised her fists, left jab, reset, right hook, duck, step back, guard up, again. She wasn't thinking about Brett or Amber or school. She was thinking about control, how to keep it, how to take it back when someone tried to steal it. That day at school, she said less than usual, head down, eyes calm, but her silence wasn't fear, it was focus. She had a plan now, and every plan has a price. She was about to learn just how high it could be. It started with a soda can. Tameka had just closed her locker when something hit her in the back. Light, but pointed. She froze. A soft clink behind her. Sneakers scuffed the floor. She turned. Brett stood a few feet away, arms crossed, his crew snickering behind him. "You dropped something," he said, eyes cold. The can rolled to her feet. Tameka looked at it, then at him. She didn't speak, didn't blink. She stepped over it and walked away. But the whisper followed her. "Stuck up." By lunch, the rumors had spread. Tameka Rollins thought she was too good for them, too proud to talk, too smart, too black. Amber fueled the fire. She acts like she's better than everybody, like she's the only one with problems. None of it was true, but in middle school, truth didn't matter. Only the story did. That afternoon in science class, the teacher stepped out for a quick call. 2 minutes, maybe 3. Just enough time for Amber to slide into the seat beside Tameka. "You've got a lot of nerve," Amber said, brushing her hair behind her ear. "Acting like we don't exist." Tameka kept writing. "You're not special, you know," Amber hissed. Tameka's pen didn't stop moving. "You think this school needs you? We were fine before you came." Still writing. "I didn't say it didn't," Tameka said, her voice calm. "Oh, so now you talk," Amber said, laughing quietly. But it wasn't funny. There was no joy in that laugh, just pressure. And something else. Jealousy and fear, the kind of fear that needs someone else to shrink first. The teacher came back. Amber slipped away, still smiling. Tameka exhaled slowly, her hand shaking. In the hallway after class, Brett brushed her shoulder hard. "Watch it," he muttered. It was all small things. A stare, a shove, gum on her seat, books dumped out of her locker, muted coughs that sounded like slurs, none of it loud enough for punishment. All of it loud enough to make her feel alone. But Tameka's silence wasn't surrender, it was strategy. She started watching, tracking, noticing who followed and who led. Who laughed and who hesitated. She didn't really want to fight, but she was ready just in case. Then on a Thursday, things finally boiled over. Tameka had gym class last period. She changed clothes fast, like always, wanting to get to the field quickly. But as she left the locker room, someone slammed the door hard behind her. The bang echoed. She turned around, but not fast enough. Brett stood there, arms spread wide like he was blocking the door. Two of his friends stood near the showers, smirking. Amber wasn't there. This wasn't a show for her. This was about power. "What's the hurry?" he asked. "We just wanted to talk." She stayed quiet. He took a step closer. "You got everyone thinking you're tough, but we know you're just scared." Another step. Her fists stayed tight at her sides. "You're from Detroit, right? You all act like gangsters or something." She tilted her head slightly. "You done?" Brett blinked, surprised she spoke. It threw him off. "I asked." He started. "You done?" she repeated, louder this time. The kid near the lockers gave a nervous laugh. Brett didn't laugh. Instead, he stepped closer and poked her shoulder. That was it. She didn't punch, not yet. She slapped his hand away hard and fast, stepping back. "Don't touch me," she said, calm and steady. "You don't get to tell me," he began, reaching again. This time, she moved first. A fast, sharp push with her palm to his chest knocked him off balance. It wasn't meant to hurt, just make him stumble. He caught himself, looked around, his face red, not from pain, but shame. "You want to hit me?" he yelled. "Go ahead, hit me!" But she didn't, not yet. She just looked at him. "I don't swing first," she said, "but don't expect me to swing soft if I do." The silence that followed was heavy and awkward. Then a door creaked open. A teacher walked back from the office. Brett backed off like nothing happened. His friends followed. No one said a word. Tameka walked to the field like nothing had happened, but something had changed. She wasn't hiding anymore. And if they thought that was the end, they had no idea what was coming. Tameka didn't tell her mum what happened in the locker room. She wanted to. She even stood by her bedroom door for a full minute that night, listening to Yolanda hum, low and tired, as she washed dishes. Then Tameka quietly turned back around. Her mother had too much to worry about already. Bills, working extra hours, cracked heels from standing on her feet for 14 hours a day. Tameka wouldn't add this to it. Instead, she sat on her bed with the lights off, headphones in, phone playing a beat she barely heard. Her thoughts were louder. She kept replaying that moment. Brett stepping in, her body moving without thinking, the pressure in her chest, like she'd opened something she wasn't sure she could close again. That night, memories of Detroit came back sharp and biting. Uncle Roe, the concrete basement. Her fists bruised from practice, his voice echoed in her head. "Fear's a tool," he once told her. "It's not your enemy unless you let it be." She remembered the heavy gloves, the seams cracked from use. She remembered how he'd make her run footwork drills until her legs burned. Back then, she thought he was just letting off steam. Now, she saw it differently. He was teaching her something nobody else would, how to control herself when other people wanted her to lose control. That kind of power doesn't come from being loud. It comes from knowing you could swing and choosing when not to. At school the next day, Brett didn't say a word. He walked past her in the hall and kept his eyes straight ahead. His shoulders were stiff, like he was trying not to show anything, but she saw the difference. He wasn't grinning. Amber gave her one long, hard stare in math class. Tameka didn't look away. That stare didn't come from confidence. It came from trying to figure out what changed. Because something had changed. The tense feeling in the air wasn't hers anymore. It was theirs. A quiet question started going around the school, getting louder. What happened behind the gym? Rumors spread. Some kids said Tameka hit Brett. Others said he tried to fight her and backed down. A few swore they heard he cried. The truth didn't matter as much as the mystery, and that was fine with Tameka. She wasn't loud about it. She still walked the halls the same way, Earbuds in, head down, books held tight to her chest. But something had shifted behind her eyes. The other students could feel it, even if they didn't understand it. She was no longer marked as a target. She was marked as a question mark. That Friday, in art class, the teacher asked them to draw a picture of themselves without using their face. Tameka didn't hesitate. She took paper and a charcoal pencil and drew 2 fists, one open, one closed. When she turned it in, the teacher stopped and stared at the drawing for a long time. "This yours?" she asked. Tameka nodded once. The teacher didn't say more, but she didn't need to. After school, Tameka stayed behind and sat on the steps outside the gym. She pulled her hoodie tighter. She wasn't waiting for anyone. She just needed the air. The sky was grey and flat. Cold was setting in, but she didn't care. Then footsteps. She turned her head slightly. It was Mr. Bowen, the janitor. He was an older man, heavy-set, usually seen with a mop or bucket nearby. Students didn't usually talk to him, but he stopped beside her, leaned on the rail and said, "You did good." She looked at him. "What?" "I seen it," he said. "What happened back there? Been here a long time. Kids like him, they don't know what to do when someone says, 'Enough.'" She didn't answer, just looked down at her shoes. He kept going. "They're going to try again. Maybe not today, maybe not next week. But when someone like you walks in quiet and walks out stronger, that rattles people." Tameka looked up. "So what do I do?" Mr. Bowen nodded toward the horizon. "You hold your line. But holding your line means standing in a storm, and storms don't blow past without trying to knock you down." It was gym class again, a week after the locker room, a week after Brett stopped making jokes. On the surface, everything looked normal. Kids running warm-up laps, Coach Harper yelling about hustle from the sideline, sneakers squeaking on the polished floor. But it's not smart to relax when things go quiet. It usually means the storm is circling, not passing. They were doing relay drills when the coach got called into the hallway. He dropped his whistle. It hung around his neck. He told them to keep running and stepped out. That was the opening. Brett and his 2 close friends, Nolan and Travis, were already near the back wall. Tameka was putting a basketball away when Nolan blocked her path, bouncing another ball casually. "Hey," he said, smirking. "Want to teach me that karate move you did to Brett?" Travis laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. She didn't answer, just tried to walk around him. Brett appeared from behind a support column, chewing gum, his face tight, with something darker than teasing. He wasn't smiling. "You think that little trick last week meant something?" he asked. "You think people are scared of you now?" Tameka watched him, quiet and steady. Brett stepped in close, just like before, close enough to see the freckles on his cheek. "I bet you can't do it twice," he whispered. "Bet you used it all up." He reached for her wrist. Wrong move. Her arm snapped out fast, but this time not to slap or push. She grabbed his wrist and twisted it, just enough to make him yelp and let go. She didn't hold on, she didn't drag it out. She just made him feel where the line was. Brett stumbled back, embarrassed once more. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice flat. "I'm not warning you again." His face twisted. "You're dead!" He rushed her. She didn't run. She ducked, sidestepped, grabbed his shoulder, and used his own speed to push him into the bleachers. Travis lunged next, messier, without aim. She moved quickly, knees bent, feet planted, and swung her elbow low into his side. He stumbled. Then Nolan froze. He just stood there, looking from Brett to Tameka, confused about how things changed so fast. Coach Harper burst back in a second later, yelling, but it was too late. The other kids stood frozen. No one was laughing. No one was even talking. The silence wasn't awkward, it was shock. They'd never seen Brett lose like this. Tameka stood in the middle of the court, chest heaving, sweat on her brow. She didn't look proud, she didn't look angry, she looked tired. Coach barked orders, sent the boys to the office, and told Tameka to follow. "You'll explain yourself in there," he snapped. She didn't argue, she just walked calmly, hands in her hoodie pockets, sneakers thudding softly on the hallway tile. In the main office, she sat on a plastic chair under bright lights. The receptionist looked like she wanted to say something, but didn't. Principal Moore came out 10 minutes later, his face tight. Inside. Now. Tameka followed him into his office. He shut the door and sat behind his desk. "You want to tell me what that was about?" he asked, leaning forward. She met his eyes. "I told him not to touch me." Moore stared at her, waiting for more. She didn't give it. "Brett's father is already on his way. Do you realize the trouble you've just caused?" "I didn't start anything," she said. He sighed. "Look, Tameka, I know it's hard being new, adjusting. But there are better ways to handle this. We have rules. I tried those," she said, cutting in. Her tone wasn't rude, but it was final. They didn't work. He blinked, clearly not used to being interrupted. The phone rang. He picked it up, then motioned for her to wait outside. She stepped into the hallway. Brett and his father were already there. His dad was red-faced, pacing, his voice loud enough to hear through the glass as he pointed and shouted. Tameka sat quietly, back straight, breathing steady. Whatever happened next, she wasn't afraid. But the real fight wasn't the one on the court. It was the one happening right now in that meeting room with the adults who said they wanted the truth. By Monday morning, everyone had heard. There weren't photos, there wasn't a video, but the story spread fast, burning through every hallway, reaching every grade, changing with every telling. Some said Tameka punched all 3 boys and walked away unhurt. Others swore Brett cried in front of the coach. One kid in the lunch line said she knocked Travis down with a spinning kick. None of that was true. But the part everyone believed, the part that mattered, was that Tameka Rollins stood her ground and won. The air in school felt different now, heavier, slower. People moved aside for her. Eyes followed her, not with teasing, but with something like respect, or maybe fear. The whispers had changed. They weren't laughing anymore. Even Brett, walking into homeroom with a split lip and a silence clinging to him, didn't speak. His usual group, scattered. Travis kept his head down all day. Nolan asked to switch lunch tables. Amber still tried. She passed Tameka in the hall, tossed her hair and muttered trash, but it sounded flat, like she was performing for an audience that wasn't watching anymore. Tameka didn't answer. She didn't even slow down. She wasn't interested in revenge. She wasn't there to be anyone's lesson. She was there to survive, on her own terms. At lunch, she sat in her usual spot alone, but it felt different. Kids from other tables kept glancing her way, like they were waiting for her to say something, start something, lead something. She didn't. She opened her notebook, pulled out a pencil, and started sketching. The page filled with sharp lines, barbed wire, broken glass. Then, somewhere near the center, she drew a girl. Small, upright, eyes closed, but fists ready. She wasn't trying to be deep. She was just trying to feel solid again. Midway through lunch, Miss Hightower, her English teacher, walked over. "Got a minute?" she asked gently. Tameka nodded and followed her to the back corner of the cafeteria, near the staff tables. "I heard what happened," Miss Hightower said, sitting across from her. "I also know you didn't start it." Tameka said nothing. The teacher leaned in slightly. "I taught Brett's sister 2 years ago. She was quiet too. He made sure of that." Tameka looked up, surprised. She hadn't expected any staff to talk so plainly. "I'm not here to pat your back," Miss Hightower continued. "But I need you to know you're not crazy, you're not overreacting, and you're not alone." That was all. Then she stood up and walked away. It wasn't a big gesture, but it stayed with Tameka. That afternoon, as she gathered her things for the bus, someone tapped her shoulder. A small, light-skinned girl with long braids and nervous hands, 7th grade, maybe 6th. "I saw what they did to you before," the girl whispered. "By the gym, I wanted to say something, but—" She trailed off, eyes wide. Tameka nodded once. "It's okay." "I'm sorry," the girl said. "But, thank you." Then she was gone. Those 2 words, "thank you," sat on Tameka's shoulders like unexpected warmth. The ride home was quiet. She didn't even put her earbuds in. That night, Yolanda sat across from her at the kitchen table, holding a letter. Her face was hard to read. "What's this I hear about a fight?" Tameka took a breath. "They cornered me again. I didn't start it." Yolanda was quiet for a long time. She folded the paper slowly, tapped it against the table. "Did you finish it?" Tameka didn't blink. "I didn't swing first, but I didn't let it slide either." Her mother exhaled, then stood up and walked behind her. She rested her hand on Tameka's shoulder. "Good," she said. "Now eat. You're too small to be throwing people around on an empty stomach." Tameka laughed, really laughed, for the first time in weeks, but standing tall once doesn't mean the fight is over. It just means more eyes are watching to see what you'll do next. The letter from the school board came 2 days later, a formal notice telling Yolanda and Tameka to come to a meeting Thursday night about what happened. The envelope was thick, the kind they use when they want to sound serious. Inside, words like incident, multiple reports, and student conduct were printed in bold. Yolanda read it twice, jaw tight. Then she folded it carefully and placed it on the kitchen counter. "All right," she said quietly. "Let's go see what they got to say." Thursday arrived cold and grey, draining the colour from everything. Yolanda pulled up to the school in her scrubs, still damp from the laundry room at the senior centre. Her eyes were tired, but her voice was firm. "You let me talk," she told Tameka. "You've done enough." Inside, the lights were too bright. The fake clean smell of floor cleaner hung in the air. The front office secretary handed Yolanda a clipboard to sign without looking up and pointed toward room 104. 3 chairs were already lined up against the far wall. Principal Moore sat stiffly at the table, with the school counselor and a district woman Tameka didn't know beside him. Brett and his father sat on the other end. His dad was tall, flushed, his voice already sounding angry. He tapped his pen against the table like an annoying clock. Tameka sat down beside her mother, back straight, eyes forward. Moore cleared his throat. "Let's begin." Brett's father jumped in immediately. "My son was attacked. Let's not play games. This girl, this new student, hit him in front of witnesses." Yolanda didn't move. She just tilted her head. "He cornered my daughter," she said calmly. "Twice on school grounds with no staff around. So if we're skipping the games, let's do it right." The counselor tried to cut in. "Mrs. Rollins, we understand tensions." "No," Yolanda said. "Don't smooth it over. You've had emails, complaints." "Other students saw it, heard it." "My daughter told you nothing, not because it didn't happen, but because she knew you wouldn't do a damn thing." Moore leaned forward. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," Yolanda said, her voice rising just a little, "is that my daughter had to defend herself in a school that promised safety while your favorite boy played the victim after getting handled." Brett shifted in his seat, his bruised lips still showing. "She hit him," his father barked. "She warned him," Yolanda replied. "He ignored it, so she reminded him." The district woman finally spoke. Her voice was cool, practiced. "This isn't about blaming anyone. It's about understanding everything that happened. Tameka, would you like to say anything?" Tameka looked at her mother. Yolanda nodded once. Tameka took a breath. "They never said it in front of you," she said, voice quiet but clear. "But they made fun of me, my clothes, my hair, my skin. They called me names, pushed me, wrote on my locker, threw food at me. I stayed quiet." Brett scoffed. "No one threw food." "You threw a soda can," Tameka said, locking eyes with him. "You tried to grab me behind the gym." Moore shifted uncomfortably. "There's no footage of that." "Exactly," Yolanda snapped. No cameras, no staff. But now that she fought back, suddenly it's worth calling a meeting. The counsellor scribbled on a notepad. The district woman leaned back, silent for a moment. "I think," she said slowly, "we need to look closer at how we handle student problems and how staff responds, especially when kids don't feel safe telling us in the first place." Brett's father stood up. "So that's it? You're taking their side?" "No one's taking sides," the woman said. "But clearly, your son's story isn't the only one that matters." He muttered something under his breath and stormed out. Brett followed, but not before giving Tameka a quick look, a mix of anger and something closer to caution. The room emptied. Moore looked worn out. Yolanda stood, smoothed her scrub top, and shook the district woman's hand.
"I'm not asking for special treatment," she said, "just fair." "You'll have it," the woman replied. "I promise." As they walked out, Tameka didn't feel like she'd won. She felt heard, for the first time. But once people start listening, they also start expecting things. Now the quiet girl had everyone watching. The following Monday, Tameka stepped onto campus and noticed something that made her pause. A space opened up around her. Not exactly out of fear, but out of recognition. Teachers nodded. More than a few students glanced her way, then quickly looked down, like they'd been caught staring. She didn't walk faster, she didn't walk slower, she just walked like she always had. But now, the hallway didn't feel like a trap, it felt like something she'd earned. Inside homeroom, low murmurs buzzed. Tameka slipped into her seat near the back. Amber was already there, surrounded by the usual group. But their energy was different, quieter, watching Tameka, talking softer. Amber was still trying to be in charge, but the sharp edge in her voice was gone. Her jokes didn't land like before. Even the girls who used to laugh on command were starting to drift away. Talking about safer things, Brett kept his distance. He didn't look scared, but he looked like someone who understood his power had limits now. That afternoon, something unexpected happened. As Tameka left math class, a folded note slipped from her book. When she opened it, there was no name, no handwriting she knew, just 5 words in uneven pencil. "I saw. I'm sorry." She stared at it for a moment, not sure what to do with it, not sure if she wanted to. She tucked it into her pocket. Later in the lunchroom, a girl from across the room, tall, brown hair, usually one of Amber's followers, walked past and mumbled, "I liked your drawing in art class." She didn't wait for a reply. Tameka raised her eyebrows but didn't respond. Some things didn't need answers. They just needed space. By the time gym class rolled around, she could feel the tension easing. Not gone, but lighter. Coach Harper pulled her aside during warm-ups. "I had to file a report," he said, eyes on his clipboard. "Just routine. Doesn't go on your record. You're good." She nodded. "Thanks." "I know I should have seen it earlier," he added, quieter. "I'll be watching more closely now." Tameka appreciated the honesty. Adults rarely said things like that out loud. They usually hid behind rules and papers. That evening, back at home, Yolanda was making grilled cheese in the pan, humming again, something she hadn't done in weeks. There was a peace in the house that hadn't been there for a while, the kind you only get after walking through something hard and coming out okay. As they ate, Yolanda looked up. "They treating you better?" Tameka nodded. "Yeah, or they're trying to." "Good," her mom said, wiping her hands. "Don't let them forget who you are. Ever." Tameka wasn't sure they even knew who she was yet, but at least now they were trying to see. That weekend, she spent hours at the public library. Not for homework, but because it was quiet and smelled like old books and carpets and ideas. She checked out a book on pencil drawing and a life story about Gordon Parks. When the librarian stamped the checkout card, she smiled. "Glad to see young folks reading," she said. Tameka smiled back. Just a little. At school the next week, everything kept shifting. The tension was still there, sometimes in looks, sometimes in quiet moments, but it wasn't crushing anymore. It wasn't just her story. Other students began to speak up about the way certain kids talked, about the jokes they'd laughed at before. One afternoon in history class, the teacher asked about resilience, bouncing back. "Someone give me an example," she said, "something from real life." Tameka didn't raise her hand. But a boy across the room, thin, glasses, always quiet, did. He looked over at her and said, "Tameka." The class went still. "She didn't run," he added. "She stood up." The teacher looked at her. You okay with that? Tameka looked at him, then the teacher, then nodded once. Yeah, I'm okay with that. But being seen comes with weight. And now she had to decide what to do with it. 2 weeks passed. Nothing big happened. No locker graffiti, no flying soda cans. Brett kept to his corner. Amber still whispered behind people's backs, but her group had gotten smaller. Some students started sitting with others they never used to. A few even nodded at Tameka when they saw her, not because they had to, just because. She hadn't become popular. That was never the point. But she'd earned something far more important. Space. She could breathe now. During lunch, she sat at her usual table, but it wasn't empty anymore. The girl who'd slipped the note into her book, her name was Shelby, had started sitting with her. Shelby didn't say much at first, just unpacked a sandwich and asked about art class. Over time, a few more students joined them. No big deal, just quiet kids tired of pretending they didn't see what was happening. Tameka didn't become their leader. She didn't want to be, but she'd made something else possible. She made it okay to speak up. In homeroom one morning, Miss Hightower brought up a new project. We're starting a campaign, she said. It's about voice, telling stories that matter. Tameka glanced up from her desk. We want students to submit real stories, no names if they want, about things they've seen or lived through here. No sugarcoating, just honesty. At first, no one moved, but then a hand went up, then 2 more. By the end of the week, the box for stories was full. Miss Hightower posted one of the first pieces on the bulletin board outside the library. It read, "She told him to back off. He didn't listen, so she made him. No name, no signature, but everyone knew." Tameka stood in front of it for a long time. Not out of pride, but because the truth finally had a place to sit. The next day, a 7th grade boy came up to her in the hallway. Short, nervous, shoulders hunched. "Hey," he said, "can I ask you something?" She nodded. "Did it feel good? You know, fighting back?" Tameka thought about it for a second. "No," she said. "It felt necessary." He nodded, like he understood. After that, things kept changing. Slowly, unevenly. The school didn't magically become safe. There were still looks, still people waiting for her to mess up, but the rules had changed. She'd changed them. Not by yelling, not by trying to be liked, just by drawing a line and holding it. One afternoon, as she was leaving school, Brett walked past her in the parking lot. For the first time, he looked directly at her. No smirk, no attitude, just a long, silent look. And then he kept walking. She didn't follow. She didn't need to. She had nothing left to prove. At home, she hung a new sketch on the wall above her bed. A girl, eyes open, standing tall between 2 storm clouds, fists at her sides but unclenched. Yolanda noticed it one night while folding laundry. "That one's new." Tameka shrugged. "Yeah, you name it?" She thought for a second, then nodded. "Boundaries." Yolanda smiled. "Just a little. Good name." That weekend, they went grocery shopping together. Something they hadn't done in weeks. Just normal, quiet, comfortable. On the drive home, Yolanda turned the radio down. "You know," she said, "your uncle would have been proud." Tameka didn't say anything right away. She just looked out the window at the rows of houses sliding past. "I didn't fight to win," she finally said. "I fought so I wouldn't disappear." Her mother reached over and squeezed her hand. Nothing more needed to be said. The next Monday, she walked back into Jefferson Middle School. Same hoodie, same walk, same eyes, but everything was different now. Not because they gave her space, but because she claimed it and held it. Some people fight for attention, others fight to be left alone. But Tameka Rollins fought for something harder, respect, without apology. If you've ever had to stand your ground when the world tried to push you into silence, then this story was for you. If it moved you, helped you see yourself or someone you know, share it, subscribe, keep coming back. Because these stories matter, you matter.